But just weeks later, that same coin stunned the collecting world when it was valued at over $1.8 million. And the craziest part? It's a regular-looking 1989 Washington quarter with a tiny P mint mark, a coin you've probably seen hundreds of times without ever realizing its secret. For decades, this coin sat quietly in circulation, passing from hand to hand like any other quarter. It bought coffee, it paid parking meters, it jingled in pockets across America. But one sharp-eyed collector spotted something that changed everything. A small imperfection that turned this ordinary coin into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. It started when a Florida man, an average hobbyist, was sorting through a jar of quarters one rainy evening. He wasn't expecting much, maybe a silver edge here, a bicentennial there, until one coin caught the light in just the right way. The luster seemed different. The rim looked slightly thicker. And then he noticed something even stranger. The letters on Liberty weren't perfectly aligned at first. He thought it was damage. Maybe it got crushed in a machine. But curiosity got the best of him. He took it to a local coin dealer. And what happened next stunned everyone in the room. The dealer's magnifying glass froze over the date. His eyes widened, and he whispered, "You have no idea what you're holding." This was no ordinary 1989 P quarter. It was a rare error, the kind of minting anomaly that shouldn't exist. Experts believe a small batch was struck on the wrong planchet, possibly leftover from a foreign coin production run. That means it's slightly off in weight, color, and composition. A few even show doubled details around Washington's face and the word quarter dollar. But here's where the story gets wild. The U.S. Mint never confirmed how many escaped into circulation. Some say only 3 are known to exist. Others believe there might still be dozens hiding in old change jars, waiting to be found by someone like you. Collectors were shocked when the first verified specimen sold at auction. It started at a modest bid, a few $1,000s at best. But then the numbers climbed, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, until finally, the hammer dropped at a jaw-dropping $1.8 million. It's not just the error. It's the story. A coin that slipped past the mint's quality checks, unnoticed for decades, only to emerge as one of the most valuable modern quarters ever recorded. The difference between a regular 1989 P quarter and one worth a fortune can be almost invisible. You need to look for subtle signs, a faint doubling in the lettering, a misaligned rim, or even a slightly off metal tone when tapped on a hard surface. These are the tiny details that separate pocket change from treasure. Dealers are now paying huge premiums for 1989 P quarters that show any trace of striking errors. Some are even sending hundreds of these coins to grading companies like PCGS and NGC, hoping to uncover another one of these million-dollar rarities. And yes, the grading companies themselves were stunned by the initial find. One expert said, "We knew errors existed, but not like this. This coin rewrote what we thought was possible." Think about that. A coin made in 1989, the same year the Berlin Wall fell, the same year you could fill your gas tank for under $1, now worth more than most people's houses. It's proof that even modern change can hide life-changing wealth. Many people who had these coins in the past probably spent them without a second thought. Maybe it was used at a gas station in Ohio, a diner in Kansas, or a grocery store in Maine. Somewhere out there, someone handed over a fortune without knowing it. Start by checking the obverse. That's Washington's portrait. Look closely at the word Liberty. On the valuable error versions, some letters appear faintly doubled, almost like a shadow behind them. Then check the date, 1989, and the tiny P mint mark under "In God We Trust." If the mint mark looks slightly off-center or tilted, you might be onto something. Flip it over. On the reverse, inspect the eagle's feathers. On the rare version, the details look unusually sharp, almost as if they were overstruck. Some even have a faint ghost image of another design beneath the eagle, caused by a die clash during production. And don't forget the rim. Many collectors overlook this, but on the million-dollar specimens, the rim appears thicker on one side than the other, a telltale sign of a misaligned die. Not every coin with scratches or marks is valuable. Real errors are consistent under magnification. If you're unsure, get it weighed. The rare ones tend to differ slightly from the official 5.67 grams due to the wrong planchet. A simple digital scale could reveal a fortune sitting in your hand. Collectors are calling the 1989 P quarter the modern miracle coin, a piece that proves there's still hidden gold in America's change. And stories like this have reignited a national treasure hunt. Across the country, people are digging through old jars, checking couch cushions, even reopening their childhood coin albums. Because lightning can strike twice. Another discovery could happen tomorrow. You could be next. Imagine finding one of these in your pocket. Imagine realizing that the coin you were about to spend on a coffee is actually worth more than a Ferrari. That's not fantasy. It's exactly what happened with this 1989 P-quartered SO. Before you spend that next quarter, take a second look. Grab a magnifier, good lighting, and your curiosity. Because history has shown that life-changing treasures often hide in plain sight. I'm talking about the 1983 P Mint Mark Washington quarter, a coin that looks so ordinary. You've probably held one 1,000 times without realizing the secret it hides, that it's one of those coins that proves miracles can still happen, even in your pocket change. Because in 1983, something went terribly wrong at the Philadelphia Mint. A mistake so small, so invisible to the untrained eye, that for years, no one even noticed. But when collectors finally did, it turned the entire coin world upside down. See, back in 1983, the U.S. Mint was producing millions of Washington quarters. Most of them were just everyday coins, tossed into pockets, dropped into payphones, and forgotten in old coffee cans. But among those millions, a few were struck with an incredible flaw, an error that would turn them into million-dollar treasures. Collectors call it a transitional error, a coin that somehow didn't follow the rules of its time. Imagine this. The Mint was experimenting with new metals, changing die pressures, and tweaking planchet compositions. Somewhere in that chaos, a handful of 1983 P quarters came out with sharper reliefs, double details, and, in some cases, struck on the wrong planchet altogether. But what makes these coins legendary isn't just the mistake. It's what happened next. One of these 1983 P quarters surfaced in a small coin show in the early 2000s. The dealer thought it was nothing special, a $1 coin at best. But one sharp-eyed collector noticed something unusual. The strike was unusually bold, the rim slightly off-center, and under a magnifier, there was clear doubling on Washington's lettering. He bought it for pocket change. Months later, that very coin sold at auction for just under $1 million. Collectors were stunned. Experts scrambled to explain it. And suddenly, everyone started checking their 1983 quarters again, from old jars, junk drawers, even car ashtrays. It all comes down to subtle details, tiny clues most people overlook. The first thing to check is the mint mark. A genuine 1983 P quarter doesn't carry a D or S, just a small P above the date. But the million-dollar versions show something special, a doubling effect on the Liberty or In God We Trust, a clear shift you can see without needing high-end equipment. Some rare ones even have a missing clad layer, revealing the copper beneath, a reddish hue that makes the coin look almost like it's glowing. Others show a die crack running through Washington's neck, a scar-like line that collectors now consider a sign of hidden fortune. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Once word got out, dealers started buying up every 1983 P quarter they could find. Prices skyrocketed overnight. A coin that once barely bought a candy bar was suddenly being auctioned for tens of thousands. And the top-graded examples? They touched that elusive million-dollar mark. One man from Ohio reportedly found his in an old change jar in his garage. He almost spent it on coffee before a friend suggested he get it appraised. That coin, worn but authentic, sold for enough to pay off his house, his debts, and still left him a small fortune. He later said, "I almost threw away $1 million because I thought it was just another quarter." That's the magic of these coins. They don't look special. They don't shine like gold or glitter like silver. But they carry history, the kind of mistake that became a miracle. You have to understand something about 1983. That was the year the Mint didn't release uncirculated mint sets, meaning collectors couldn't easily get perfect examples of that year's coins. So every surviving high-grade 1983 P quarter today is incredibly rare. Combine that with a minting error, and you've got one of the most valuable modern quarters ever struck. Dealers still whisper about them. They say if you find one in MS 67 or higher, with strong luster, clean fields, and that sharp P mint mark, you might be holding $1 million coin. And here's the twist. These coins still circulate. People still spend them without knowing. Imagine buying a soda with a coin that could change your life forever. It sounds impossible, but it's happened. More than once. Hold the coin under bright light. Check the words United States of America and quarter dollar. If the letters seem doubled, you might have a double die strike. Then look closely at the eagle on the reverse. If you see uneven feathers or a distorted beak, that's another red flag. Next, weigh it. A regular quarter should weigh 5.67 grams. If yours weighs slightly less or more, it could be struck on the wrong planchet. And that's where values explode. Finally, always check for missing clad layers or unusual colors. A reddish tint or exposed copper could mean you found one of the ultra-rare error coins worth thousands, or even that million-dollar jackpot. Collectors call these coins sleepers, rare treasures hiding in plain sight. And the 1983 Washington quarter is one of the greatest sleepers in U.S. coin history. Just think about it. Every time you get change at the store, every coin you toss in a jar could be worth far more than you imagine. Because somewhere out there, still circulating, are a few 1983 quarters that could make someone a millionaire. And if that someone is you, your life could change with a single coin. So tonight, go through your change. Check your drawers, your old jars, your glove box. You never know what you might find. It was just a 1971 Washington quarter that someone found in their loose change. Now, imagine this. You're standing in line at a gas station, digging through your pocket for exact change. You pull out a quarter, just like you've done 1,000 times before. But what if I told you that simple coin, that everyday piece of metal, could quietly hold the power to change your life forever? Because one man discovered that his ordinary-looking 1971 quarter wasn't ordinary at all. It was a hidden treasure worth up to $1.1 million. The story begins in 1971 at the Denver Mint. Millions of quarters were being struck for circulation. Nothing seemed unusual, at least not at first. But among those millions, a few rare quarters came out with something extraordinary. Tiny, almost invisible mistakes that turned them into million-dollar miracles decades later. These rare coins were born from minting errors so subtle, most people would never notice them. A double strike here, a weak die there, or even a planchet meant for a different metal, all caused by the chaos of mass production. But those tiny errors would become the difference between 25 cents and $1 million. One story that stunned collectors began when a man in Colorado was sorting through his change jar. He noticed something strange about one quarter. The rim looked slightly off, and the mint mark seemed misplaced. At first, he thought it was just worn out. But curiosity got the better of him. He took it to a local coin shop, and the dealer went silent. That small, worn quarter was actually struck on a 40% silver planchet left over from 1970. A mistake that should have never happened. Collectors were shocked. How could a silver coin end up in 1971 circulation when the U.S. Mint had officially stopped producing them? Turns out, a handful of leftover silver blanks accidentally got mixed into the new batch of copper-nickel quarters. Those few coins became legends, surviving time, pocket change, and pure luck. And when one finally appeared at auction, it fetched an eye-watering $1.1 million. But that's not even the strangest part. Another 1971 quarter surfaced later with a completely different error, a dramatic off-center strike. Half the design missing, yet fully detailed on the rest. What most people would call a damaged coin was, in the collector's world, a jackpot. Dealers from across the country started flying in, trying to confirm if it was authentic. When it finally hit the market, bidders went wild. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Experts began uncovering new varieties, transitional errors, die cracks, misaligned mint marks, all tied to the 1971 Denver production run. And the values? They skyrocketed overnight. Some examples that once sold for a few $100s suddenly jumped into the six-figure range. The rarest of them all, the silver planchet error that crossed the $1 million mark. This is where it gets even more fascinating. The average person looks at a quarter and sees just George Washington's face and a bald eagle. But a trained eye sees everything. The sharpness of the strike, the texture of the metal, the thickness of the rim, and even how the mint mark sits against the date. Because in coin collecting, every microscopic detail can mean the difference between pocket change and a life-changing payday. Dealers still talk about that 1971 discovery like it's a legend whispered in coin shows. They say the man who found it couldn't believe it at first. He thought the dealer was joking when he said, "You're holding a coin worth over $1 million." But it was no joke. That quarter became one of the most expensive error coins ever found in U.S. history. Now here's what you need to look for. First, flip your quarter and check for that D mint mark just below Washington's portrait. If it's missing, faint, or oddly placed, that's your first clue. Then, feel the weight. Most 1971 quarters should weigh about 5.67 grams. But if yours feels slightly heavier, closer to 5.9 or 6 grams, it might be struck on silver. That's when you don't spend it. You protect it, verify it, and have it authenticated by a professional. Next, inspect the rim and edges. If you see no copper stripe along the side, that's another major red flag that you could be holding a transitional silver error. And finally, under a magnifier, look for doubling, especially around the letters Liberty or the date 1971. Even minor doubling on a Denver minted quarter could dramatically raise its value. But here's the wild part. Many of these coins are still out there, tucked away in jars, forgotten in drawers, or mixed into vending machine change. Every week, collectors report new finds, and every time, it reignites the same thought. How many million-dollar quarters are still waiting to be found? And that's what makes this story so powerful. It's not just about metal or mint marks. It's about hope. It's about the idea that the next incredible discovery might come from someone just like you. An ordinary person who took a closer look at something everyone else ignored. The 1971 D. Washington quarter stands as proof that miracles can hide in plain sight. A coin that traveled through decades, gas stations, and grocery stores, only to end up changing someone's life forever. So the next time you hold a quarter, don't just see it as spare change. See it as a tiny time capsule, one that could hold $1 million secret waiting to be uncovered. The 1986 P. Washington quarter, an ordinary-looking piece of pocket change that turned out to be one of the most shocking discoveries in modern coin collecting. It's a story that still gives seasoned collectors chills, because what happened next turned a simple 25-cent coin into $1 million miracle. Back in 1986, the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia was working at full throttle. Billions of quarters were rolling off the presses, shiny, new, and ready for circulation. To most people, it was just another year, another coin. But among those billions, a few quarters came out unlike any others. And the mistake was so subtle, so invisible to the casual eye, that most people never noticed it. But those who did, those who held on to one, ended up holding a fortune. It began when a collector in Pennsylvania was sorting through his pocket change. He spotted a quarter that just didn't look right. The edge was slightly thicker, the shine a little duller, and Washington's profile looked almost doubled. He tossed it under a magnifier and froze. What he saw wasn't normal mintware. It was a rare minting anomaly, one that shouldn't exist. But before we get into that, imagine this. A coin minted for 25 cents, sitting forgotten in a jar for decades, suddenly turning up in an auction and selling for over $1 million. It sounds like a fairy tale, but it's real. And the 1986 P quarter has become a legend among numismatists because of the mysterious errors that have surfaced over the years. Some of these coins were struck on experimental planchets, the metal discs used to make coins. Instead of the usual copper-nickel alloy, a few were accidentally pressed on silver planchets left over from previous commemorative runs. The result? A 1986 quarter that weighs slightly different, rings like silver when dropped, and carries a metallic shimmer unlike any modern coin. Collectors were stunned. One of these experimental strikes surfaced at an estate sale, sold for over $250,000 in early bidding. But after grading and verification, the final auction price climbed beyond all expectations, crossing the $1 million mark. Dealers couldn't believe it. The coin world went silent for a moment, then exploded in excitement. But that's not the only variation that's sending shockwaves through the community. Some 1986 P quarters show clear double-die errors, where parts of the design, especially Washington's eye, nose, and the word Liberty, appear shadowed or doubled. It's a ghostly effect that comes from a rare die misalignment during production. And these are the exact details that separate a 25-cent coin from one worth hundreds of thousands, or even millions. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. A collector in Florida, A retiree who'd been hunting through coins for decades brought his 1986 quarter to a small local show. The dealer almost laughed when he saw it, until he held it under proper lighting. The rim looked irregular, almost as if it had been struck twice. The texture of the metal was off, and under magnification, the surface shimmered differently than typical copper-nickel coins. They weighed it, and it was 6.25 grams. That's silver weight. That single detail changed everything. That one coin sold for just over $1.2 million. From a pocket find to a life-changing payday. The story spread like wildfire through online forums, collector groups, and news outlets. Everyone started pulling out their 1986 quarters. Dealers were suddenly buying rolls from banks, scanning each one for those telltale signs. The wrong weight, the unusual ring, the double die marks. There could still be more out there. The U.S. Mint never officially recorded any silver strikes for 1986 quarters. But as history has shown, mint mix-ups do happen. Sometimes leftover planchets from previous minting runs get stuck in the hoppers. When production resumes, they're struck by mistake, creating ultra-rare hybrid coins that should never have existed. Collectors compare these moments to striking gold. Dealers say that finding one is like finding lightning in a bottle, once in a lifetime, maybe never again. And yet, people keep finding them. One man's pocket change became a $1 million miracle. Another collector discovered a 1986 P quarter with a faint off-center strike. Only about 3% off, barely noticeable. But combined with its silver composition, that one fetched nearly $600,000. But this story isn't just about luck. It's about awareness. The difference between a normal coin and a life-changing one often comes down to a few seconds of attention. Look closely at your coins, especially your quarters from the mid-80s. The 1986 P mint mark is found right beside Washington's ponytail, just above the date. Check for any doubling in the lettering, any unusual luster, or an off-color tone that hints at silver. And if you have a small digital scale, weigh it. The standard 1986 quarter should weigh 5.67 grams. Anything significantly heavier, around 6.25 grams, might mean you're holding one of those legendary silver-struck errors. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these. Auction houses are offering private sales with confidential buyers. Some collectors even whisper about a few 1986 quarters struck on foreign planchets, possibly from blanks intended for coins of other countries being minted at the Philadelphia facility. If proven true, those could easily exceed the $1 million mark again. Think about that for a moment. A simple coin most people toss in a parking meter could quietly hold the value of a house. It's poetic, almost mystical. How something so small could carry so much history, mystery, and wealth. One veteran collector described holding a rare 1986 P as feeling electricity in your hand. Another said it reminded him why he started collecting in the first place. The thrill of discovery, the romance of chance, the hope that your next find might just change your life. So the next time you grab a handful of change, slow down. Take a look at those quarters. Pay attention to the date, the mint mark, the weight, and the feel. That subtle difference you almost ignored might just be your ticket to the Millionaires Club. Collectors across America are now obsessed with the 1986 P Washington quarter, not because it's old, but because it hides one of the most fascinating modern coin mysteries. And if even one more of these silver-struck or double-die pieces turns up, it could once again rewrite what a quarter is worth in the eyes of collectors and investors alike. That it's wild to think about. A coin minted in a rush, lost in circulation, forgotten in drawers, then rediscovered decades later and sold for more than $1 million. That's not just history. That's destiny. We're talking about the mysterious 2002 P Tennessee quarter dollar, a coin that's left collectors speechless and dealers scrambling to find one before they disappear into private collections forever. It looks like any ordinary state quarter at first glance. You've seen thousands of them. 3 guitars, a fiddle, and the words musical heritage. But here's the twist. One small, almost invisible mistake on a few of these quarters turned them into $1 million treasures. The story begins in 2002, when the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia was striking the Tennessee quarters as part of the statehood series. Millions rolled off the presses. But among those millions, a few coins came out, different, slightly off-center, extra metal around the edge. And one coin, in particular, would change everything. That coin surfaced in 2019. A Tennessee collector named James was sorting through a jar of change he'd kept since his father passed away. Just ordinary quarters, or so he thought, until one caught his eye. It shimmered strangely under the light. The rim looked thicker on one side, thinner on the other, and the P mint mark seemed misplaced. James almost tossed it aside, but something stopped him. He took it to a local dealer, who nearly dropped his loupe when he saw it. The dealer whispered, "You have no idea what this is, do you?" What happened next stunned the entire coin world. That quarter was authenticated by a top grading company as a full double-die obverse with a rare off-center strike, one of only a handful ever discovered from the 2002 P Tennessee mintage. It sold at a private auction for over $1.3 million. Collectors couldn't believe it. A quarter most people would spend on a parking meter had just become a millionaire maker. During the minting process in 2002, a set of dies used at the Philadelphia Mint were reportedly misaligned. Not by much, just a fraction of a millimeter. But that tiny shift caused a rare doubling on the inscriptions Tennessee and musical heritage. The guitars appear to have a ghost-like shadow if you look closely. That doubling, combined with an off-center strike, made the coin one of the rarest errors in modern minting history. Now, here's where it gets even more fascinating. Some experts believe there could be more of these quarters still out there, sitting unnoticed in change jars, glove compartments, or old coin rolls tucked away in drawers. There were over 500 million Tennessee quarters minted in 2002. Even if only a dozen of them have this error, that's still a once-in-a-lifetime chance for a lucky finder. But what makes this particular coin worth over $1 million isn't just the error, it's the condition. The one James found was nearly flawless, graded MS, 68 by PCGS. No scratches, nowhere. A time capsule from the mint. Dealers say that if you find one even close to that condition, you could be sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars. And yet, most people still don't know what to look for. That's where this gets exciting. Here's how to spot it. Take out any 2002 quarter with a P mint mark. That's from the Philadelphia Mint. Look closely at the guitars and the word Tennessee. If you notice a faint shadowing or doubling on the letters, especially around the T or the strings of the guitars, don't ignore it. That's the sign of a doubled die. Next, check the edges. If one side's rim looks thicker or the design appears slightly shifted off-center, that's another major red flag. And it could mean you're holding one of the ultra-rare off-center strike versions. Finally, examine the mint mark. On the rarest examples, the P sits slightly tilted or too close to the design elements. That subtle misplacement alone can push the coin's value into 6 or 7 figures. Now imagine, one of those could be sitting right now in your kitchen drawer, inside an old coffee can of change. You might even have spent one years ago without knowing. Collectors have been rushing to recheck their old Tennessee quarters since the $1 million sale hit headlines. Coin forums lit up overnight. Some called it the Music City miracle. Others said it was proof that even modern coins still have secrets waiting to be uncovered. And it's true, because every coin tells a story. Every minting error is a frozen moment in history, a slip in precision that creates accidental art worth a fortune. One small difference in pressure, 1 second of misalignment. And suddenly, a quarter that costs 25 cents to make becomes a symbol of luck, mystery, and $1 million opportunity. Start with your own change. Pull out those 2002 quarters with the P mint mark and give them a careful look. Hold them under good light, tilt them side to side, and use a magnifying glass if you can. The details that separate a common coin from a $1 million masterpiece are often smaller than a grain of sand. And don't let anyone tell you modern quarters aren't worth collecting. Because time and again, stories like this prove otherwise. Coins from our pockets, from our everyday lives, can suddenly rewrite what we think of as valuable. James' story is a reminder that treasures aren't always buried in the ground. Sometimes, they're right there in your hand, waiting for you to notice. And who knows, maybe your next handful of change will hold a coin that changes your life. But when the truth came out, it shocked collectors everywhere. The 2000 P Maryland quarter dollar, a coin that most people have spent without a second thought, has been found to be worth up to $1 million. Yes, you heard that right. A single quarter worth $1 million. It all started quietly. Back in the year 2000, when the U.S. Mint released the Maryland State Quarter, Nobody could have imagined that one of these coins would later cause such a storm in the coin collecting world. The design featured the Maryland State House dome, a proud symbol of American history. Millions of these quarters entered circulation, jingling through pockets and cash registers all across the country. But among those millions, a few coins had something different, something extraordinary. At first, nobody noticed. These special Maryland quarters looked normal at a glance. But hidden beneath that silver shine was a secret so rare, even experienced collectors couldn't believe it when they saw it. One man in Baltimore discovered it purely by chance. He'd been saving state quarters in a small jar on his desk, hoping one day to complete the whole collection. One evening, while polishing his coins under a desk lamp, something caught his eye. The light hit the coin in a strange way. The edges seemed slightly off, the details sharper on one side and faded on the other. Curious, he took a closer look through a magnifying glass. What he saw next nearly made his heart stop. The lettering around the rim of the coin wasn't aligned correctly. The mint mark P from the Philadelphia Mint looked faint, almost ghostly. And the dome of the Maryland State House had a strange doubling effect, like a shadow had been struck into the metal itself. That he thought it was just a small error, maybe a manufacturing slip-up. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. When this collector brought the coin to a local dealer, the expert's jaw dropped. The man examined it under high magnification, ran his fingers along the rim, and said only one word: unbelievable. The coin was later authenticated as a rare double-strike Maryland quarter, a minting mistake that slipped through the cracks at the Philadelphia Mint. Not only was it struck twice, but the alignment was so unusual, so perfect in its imperfection, that it instantly became one of the most desirable state quarters ever found. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were scrambling to locate any similar examples. Auctions started buzzing. And when one of these error coins finally hit the block, it sold for just under $1 million. That sale changed everything. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know how to spot one. Treasure hunters started digging through jars, drawers, and old coin albums. News spread online like wildfire. The 2000 P Maryland quarter, the one with the P mint mark and a doubling error, could turn an ordinary person into a millionaire overnight. But here's where it gets interesting. Not every error is worth a fortune. Some people rushed to sell their Maryland quarters thinking they had the one, only to find out it was a normal strike. The true $1 million Maryland quarter has a few unmistakable traits. First, look closely at the dome of the Maryland State House. On the rarest examples, you'll see a doubling. The lines of the dome appear slightly overlapped or shadowed. It's subtle, but it's there. Second, the P mint mark is often faint or partially struck. This happens because the die, the metal stamp that presses the design, slipped or bounced during minting. And finally, the rim of the coin may appear slightly thicker on one side than the other. This off-center strike is what makes the coin unique. Now here's the twist. Some collectors believe there are still a handful of these coins hidden in circulation. Imagine that for a moment. You could walk into a gas station, hand over $1, and get 75 cents in change, one of which could secretly be worth $1 million. Sounds impossible, right? But it's happened before. There's the story of a retiree in Virginia who was sorting through his change jar one afternoon. He'd been collecting coins for decades, but never found anything valuable. Then he picked up a Maryland quarter that looked different. A little shinier, a little uneven. He almost tossed it back, but something told him to check again. A local appraiser later confirmed it was one of the ultra-rare error coins. That man's life changed forever. Dealers still talk about that story because it's a reminder that lightning can strike anywhere. Some of the most valuable coins in U.S. history weren't locked in safes or collector sets. They were hiding in everyday circulation, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. And that's the magic of coin collecting. Every coin tells a story. Every scratch, every shimmer, every imperfection could be a clue to something extraordinary. The Maryland quarter's tale is one of mystery and chance. A small mistake at the mint that turned into $1 million miracle. But let's dig even deeper into what makes this coin so fascinating. The Maryland quarter was the 7th design released in the U.S. Mint's 50-state quarters program. Each state got its own design, minted for only a short period. Most of these coins are worth just 25 cents today. But when an error like this occurs, when something goes wrong during the minting process, It creates a collectible anomaly that sends shockwaves through the market. Experts believe it was a misaligned die clash. That means the dies that stamped the coin struck each other by mistake, leaving ghost images that transferred onto later coins. These ghost images are what create that doubling effect. And because the mint inspects millions of coins a day, a few mistakes always slip through. Those few mistakes are what make collectors go wild. Think about it. A coin worth $1 million today started as a small accident on a busy production line 25 years ago. One misstep, one vibration, one fraction of a second off, and boom, a legend was born. And here's another kicker. The number of known Maryland double strike quarters is tiny. Fewer than a dozen have been authenticated at top grading levels. That scarcity, combined with the story behind it, drives collectors to pay life-changing amounts. So, if you're holding on to a 2000p Maryland quarter, it's time to take a closer look. Use a magnifying glass, check for that doubling on the dome, and inspect the P mint mark carefully. If it looks faint or off-center, don't rush to spend it. Get it checked by a professional grading company like PCGS or NGC. That coin sitting in your pocket could be your ticket to something incredible. Imagine calling your local dealer and hearing the words, "Sir, this coin might be worth close to $1 million." Collectors say the Maryland quarter represents more than just money. It represents hope, the thrill of the hunt, the belief that even in the most ordinary places, treasures are waiting to be found. And that's why, every time you get change, you should take a moment to look. Because while most people see just another quarter, the trained eye sees possibility, history, and fortune all rolled into one. But when it resurfaced decades later, it shocked collectors and sold for nearly $1 million. Imagine that, a simple 1776 to 1975 D mint mark Washington quarter, a coin so ordinary it passes through hands unnoticed every single day. But what if I told you one of these coins carries a secret so powerful it could rewrite the way collectors see American history? The story begins in the mid-1970s, a time when America was preparing to celebrate its 200th birthday. The U.S. Mint decided to do something special, design a commemorative quarter that would honor the nation's bicentennial. On its reverse, the familiar eagle was replaced with a revolutionary drummer boy, a symbol of courage, independence, and the American spirit. Every coin was proudly stamped with the dual date, 1776 to 1976. But somewhere deep within the Denver Mint, something extraordinary happened. A handful of these quarters weren't like the rest. Some struck on the wrong planchet, some with faint doubling on the drummer's drum, others with a shimmering silver luster that didn't belong on a regular copper-nickel coin. Mint workers never imagined that decades later, these tiny differences would make collectors' jaws drop and turn ordinary pocket change into $1 million treasure. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. In 2016, a coin collector in Colorado walked into a small-town antique shop. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just browsing through old tools, postcards, and dusty coin albums. But tucked inside one of those albums was a 1776 to 1976 D Washington quarter. It looked normal at first glance, but something about its shine caught his eye. He flipped it over, tilted it under the light, and noticed the faintest silver gleam. His hands started to tremble. He weighed the coin. It was heavier than a regular clad quarter. He took it to a local dealer, who said, "This can't be what I think it is." Days later, the coin was authenticated as a rare bicentennial quarter struck on a 40% silver planchet, a minting error that should never have left the Denver Mint. At auction, that very coin fetched close to $1 million. The collector's life changed overnight. Dealers were stunned. Collectors were calling every contact they had. Suddenly, everyone was checking their bicentennial quarters again, digging through jars, checking their kids' collections, even emptying out vending machine change trays. Because if one slipped through the cracks, others might have too. But here's where the story takes a turn most people don't know. You see, the Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of bicentennial quarters, but only a microscopic fraction carried the telltale signs of an error or special planchet. Some were struck on leftover silver blanks meant for collector sets. Others had doubled dies, misaligned strikes, or weak mint marks. Each one is a little different, and each one could be hiding in plain sight. Most collectors know that all bicentennial quarters bear the dual date 1776 to 1976. But look closer at the mint mark. The D should be crisp, well-centered, and raised. On rare error coins, the mint mark appears faint, sometimes almost melted into the surface, a result of worn dies or misstruck blanks. The coin's luster is another clue. Silver quarters have a colder, brighter tone compared to the dull gray of clad quarters. And then there's the sound. When you drop a regular clad quarter on a table, it gives a dull, flat ring. But a silver one? It sings, a high, crisp tone that collectors call the silver chime. Many lucky finders have discovered their fortune simply by listening to that unmistakable sound. One man in Ohio, for instance, found his bicentennial quarter while cleaning out his late father's coin jars. He almost spent it at a gas station before realizing it looked different. When he had it tested, the results confirmed it was struck on a 90% silver planchet, likely a leftover blank from a commemorative proof run. That coin is now insured for nearly $1 million. Collectors across America began scouring through their change, hoping lightning would strike twice. Pawn shops saw a flood of bicentennial quarters. Some were ordinary, yes, but every now and then, one would stand out, with an odd color, strange strike, or faint doubling that hinted at hidden value. The thrill of the hunt became irresistible. But what makes this coin's story even more fascinating is how it almost didn't exist. During the 1970s, the mint faced massive production demands. They were preparing millions of coins for circulation while also crafting special silver versions for collectors. Mistakes were inevitable. Somewhere between the presses, a few silver blanks got mixed into the standard production run, and the results were history making .to this day. Experts debate how many true silver bicentennial era quarters were made at the Denver Mint. Some say only a few dozen. Others suspect hundreds remain undiscovered in circulation. What's certain is that every time one surfaces, it reignites a wave of excitement across the collecting world. But here's something most people overlook. Even if your 1776 to 1976 D quarter isn't silver, it could still be valuable. Double die obverse, where Washington's profile appears doubled, especially around the eyes, and the motto, "In God We Trust," are highly sought after. So are off-center strikes and coins with full, sharp drum lines on the reverse. High-grade, uncirculated examples with mirror-like surfaces can fetch thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. Collectors say the key to finding these treasures is patience and a good eye. The tiniest imperfection, the subtlest shimmer, can be the difference between a quarter worth 25 cents and one worth $1 million. And the funny thing is, many of these coins are still out there, sitting in drawers, coin jars, and boxes of forgotten change, waiting for someone with curiosity and a bit of luck to notice what others missed. But what happened next with that first discovery is what made headlines. After the Colorado collector's coin sold, it reignited interest in the bicentennial series. Auction houses began seeing more submissions. One coin, graded MS-68 by PCGS, sold for over $19,000, not because it was silver, but because of its near-perfect condition. That's the magic of the bicentennial quarter. Its value lies not just in its metal, but in its story. Every scratch, every shine, every faint die crack tells a tale of America's 200th birthday, of minting pressure, of human error, and of a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. First, flip the coin over and check the edge. If you see a bright silver color with no trace of copper, it could be struck on a silver planchet. Next, weigh it. A regular quarter weighs about 5.67 grams, while silver planchets are heavier, around 6.25 grams. Look closely at the D mint mark. If it appears faint, off-center, or shows signs of doubling, you may have something special. Finally, examine the drummer's drum. Strong, sharp details and clear drum lines can indicate a high-grade strike, the kind collectors pay a premium for. The truth is, these coins are out there, hidden in plain sight. Some in pocket change, others in old coffee cans or forgotten collections. And with values soaring, even the most ordinary-looking bicentennial quarter could be your ticket to a life-changing discovery. One coin, one mistake, one moment of attention. That's all it takes to turn everyday change into $1 million miracle. But when a sharp-eyed collector picked it up and took a closer look, his hands began to shake. What looked like an ordinary 1985 D Washington quarter turned out to be one of the rarest, most valuable coins ever discovered. A $1 million miracle hiding in plain sight. Most people would never suspect it. After all, 1985 quarters are everywhere. They're the kind of coin you toss into a vending machine or drop into a tip jar without a second thought. But what if I told you that one small mistake at the Denver Mint that year created a coin so rare, so mysterious, that collectors are still arguing over how it even happened? And what if that same mistake turned a 25-cent coin into a fortune worth up to $1.1 million? The story begins deep within the Denver Mint, a year when the machines were running nonstop. Billions of quarters poured through the presses, each carrying the familiar portrait of George Washington on one side and the bold eagle on the other. But among that sea of coins, something strange happened. A small batch was struck using improperly prepared dies that had microscopic doubling, faint misalignments, and even subtle off-metal compositions. These weren't supposed to exist. And yet, they did. One day, decades later, a man in Colorado named Thomas was sorting through loose change. He wasn't a professional collector, just someone killing time on a Sunday afternoon. As he examined a shiny quarter, something caught his eye. The mint mark, that tiny D beneath Washington's hair, seemed slightly off, almost like it was shadowed or doubled. Curious, he held it under a magnifying glass. And that's when he saw it. The letters in Liberty weren't sharp and even. They were doubled, ghost-like images, faint but undeniable. The date looked stretched, and the rim of the coin wasn't perfectly centered. He thought maybe it was just wear and tear. But something inside told him to hold on to it. Weeks later, he posted pictures of the coin online. Collectors were stunned. Experts flooded the comments. Some called it an extreme die clash. Others thought it was a transitional strike on a different metal planchet, possibly leftover from a previous year. But when the coin was professionally examined, the truth came out. This was no ordinary mint error. It was a 1 in a billion anomaly, a 1985 D quarter struck on a 90% silver planchet, something that should have been phased out long before. Dealers went silent when they saw the results. And when that same coin hit the auction block, the bidding war that followed was nothing short of legendary. Collectors flew in from across the country. Phones rang nonstop. The hammer finally dropped at an unbelievable price, over $1.1 million. But what makes this coin even more fascinating is the mystery that still surrounds it. How did a silver planchet, used years earlier, end up in a 1985 Denver Mint press? Was it an accident, or did someone at the Mint intentionally slip it through, unaware of what it would become decades later? No one knows for sure. Since that discovery, collectors have been obsessed. Coin hunters now check every 1985 D quarter they come across, hoping lightning might strike twice. And believe it or not, a few similar examples have surfaced. Coins showing faint doubling on Washington's eye, or slightly off-center strikes that could indicate a unique die pairing. None have matched the $1 million example yet, but some have still sold for thousands. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. When grading companies tried to certify more 1985 D quarters, they realized just how tricky it was to identify genuine mint errors from post-mint damage. Some coins looked doubled due to machine strikes or circulation wear. Others had fake toning added to make them appear old and valuable. The line between authentic rarity and clever imitation blurred, and that made this coin even more legendary. The hunt grew fierce. People began checking their pocket change, coin jars, even old family collections. Pawn shops saw a surge in people bringing in handfuls of quarters, hoping to catch a break. And every now and then, a story would surface. Someone finding a strange 1985 D quarter with unusual shine or thickness. Could it be another $1 million coin? Maybe. Maybe not. But the dream keeps everyone searching. Collectors were shocked again in 2020 when a second 1985 D quarter, also believed to have been struck on a silver planchet, was authenticated. Though it didn't fetch quite the same record, it still sold for an astonishing 6 figures. That sale reignited the fire. Suddenly, every coin show, every online auction, every late-night eBay listing seemed to whisper the same thing. Check your 1985 D quarters. And here's where the story gets even more fascinating. Some experts believe there may be a small batch, perhaps 10 to 15 coins, that share the same die characteristics as the $1 million specimen. That means more could be out there, sitting unnoticed in drawers, jars, and old collections across America. Imagine being the person who finds the next one. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. When you look closely at a 1985 quarter, pay attention to the edges. If the edge looks more silver than nickel, that's your first clue. Real silver quarters have a solid, uniform edge, not the copper-colored stripe you see on modern coins. Next, check the weight. A genuine silver strike should weigh about 6.25 grams, while regular clad quarters weigh closer to 5.67 grams. That difference might seem small, but it's enough to turn your coin from pocket change into a fortune. Now look at the mint mark. On genuine 1985 rarities, the D sometimes appears slightly doubled or tilted, a clue that the die was misaligned during production. Under magnification, you might also see faint doubling on the word Liberty or the date, 1985. Even the tiniest doubling can mean the difference between a common coin and one worth hundreds of thousands, even $1 million. Condition is everything. A worn coin, even with a rare error, might not fetch much. But if your 1985 quarter is uncirculated, still sharp, bright, and crisp, you could be sitting on a life-changing treasure. The higher the grade, the higher the value. So before you spend that handful of quarters, take a moment. Turn them under the light. Look closely at the mint mark, the rim, the shine. You never know which one could be your ticket to freedom, your proof that luck still exists, that ordinary people can uncover extraordinary things. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. And yours could too. The 1985 Washington quarter has taught the coin world a powerful lesson, that even the most ordinary objects can hold unimaginable value when history, chance, and timing collide. Collectors still whisper about it, still dream about finding another. Yes, you heard that right. A simple 1986 mint mark Washington quarter, the kind that most people toss into vending machines without a second thought, has shocked collectors and dealers across the country. What started as a forgotten coin from the mid-80s has become one of the most mysterious and valuable pieces of U.S. currency ever discovered. And the craziest part? You might have one sitting in your pocket right now. It all began with a quiet discovery at a small coin show in Pennsylvania. A man walked in with a handful of old change, coins he'd been saving since his teenage years. Among them was a 1986 quarter. No shine, no polish, just an ordinary, worn piece of metal. But when he handed it to a dealer for a quick look, the room went silent. The dealer leaned closer, squinted through his magnifier, and whispered, "This can't be real." What they found that day changed everything. That 1986 quarter wasn't just a common coin. It had an extraordinary minting flaw, one that even the most experienced collectors had never seen before. The edges were slightly doubled, the design appeared struck off-center, and deep within the surface was a faint but undeniable layering error. A clue that this coin was never meant to look the way it did. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. When this unassuming quarter hit the auction block, bidders went wild. Within minutes, the price skyrocketed. 50,000, 200,000, $500,000, and finally, the hammer dropped at an unbelievable $1.2 million. The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. And the man who once thought he was holding pocket change suddenly became a millionaire overnight. Collectors were shocked. Experts scrambled to understand how such a coin could exist. The Philadelphia Mint produced millions of quarters that year, but none like this. The mistake wasn't just a minor doubling. It was a full die misalignment paired with an experimental planchet, a rare combination that creates a perfect storm of value. Some even say a small batch of these 1986 quarters slipped out during a transitional test period, when the mint was refining its metal compositions. But here's where the story gets even stranger. Rumors started spreading among coin forums and old collector circles. Some claimed they'd seen similar coins years ago, quarters with faint doubling near Washington's eye, strange rim thickness, or uneven mint marks. Others dismissed them as common wear. But after the $1 million sale, everyone began checking their old change again. Dealers reported floods of 1986 quarters being brought in by hopeful collectors, each one praying they had the next miracle find. One retired machinist from Ohio shared that he nearly spent his rare quarter at a gas station years earlier. It wasn't until he saw the news that he dug through his old coin jar and found it again. His coin wasn't identical to the $1 million one, but the errors were close enough that experts valued it at over $40,000. Imagine that a single coin forgotten for decades is suddenly worth more than a luxury CAR. It all comes down to a perfect mix of rarity, error, and condition. Most 1986 quarters are made from copper-nickel clad, perfectly struck, and evenly distributed. But this rare version shows deep strike doubling on the word liberty, a faint ghost image around Washington's profile, and in some cases, an off-center strike that cuts into the edge. Under magnification, experts also found unusual surface texture, proof that the metal planchet used may have been from a wrong alloy batch, possibly intended for another denomination entirely. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin. They say only a few examples exist, and each one that appears sends shockwaves through the coin market. One expert described it as lightning in metal form, a coin born from accident, fate, and precision all at once. And just when collectors thought they'd seen it all, another twist appeared. A private collector from Florida recently revealed he'd been holding onto a similar 1986 P quarter for years, unaware of its potential. When he finally sent it for grading, the results confirmed his suspicions, a double-struck reverse paired with an early die state. The grading company gave it an MS-67 error designation, and that coin alone is now estimated to fetch over $900,000 if it ever hits the auction floor. But most people miss it. They overlook the faint doubling, the slightly misplaced mint mark, or the subtle shift in Washington's jawline. These details are almost invisible to the untrained eye, yet they make all the difference between a 25-cent coin and one worth over $1 million. Imagine checking your spare change one night and realizing you're holding history in your hands. The idea seems impossible until it isn't, because that's exactly what happened to these few lucky finders. Their coins weren't pristine, they weren't shiny, they weren't kept in fancy holders. They were ordinary quarters, until someone looked closer. Now let's talk about how you can identify one yourself. If you have a 1986 quarter with a P mint mark just above the date, take a good look. Start with the rim. Is it perfectly round, or does it seem slightly thicker on one side? Next, study Washington's face under a magnifier. Look for ghosting, doubling, or soft edges around his eye, nose, or the word liberty. Flip it over and check the eagle's wings. On some million-dollar varieties, the left wing appears thicker or shadowed, a sign of a doubled die. Also, pay attention to the color and texture. The rare 1986 P-era quarter may appear duller or uneven in tone. That's a sign it was struck on a wrong planchet, possibly leftover from a test run. If yours shows these traits, don't clean it. Don't polish it. Instead, take it straight to a reputable coin dealer or grading company. A simple cleaning can destroy thousands, even millions, of dollars in value. Collectors across the U.S. are still searching. Every time another rare 1986 P quarter surfaces, it proves one thing. These coins are out there, hiding in plain sight. In jars, in drawers, in dusty change piles. Pieces of history waiting for someone to notice them. Yes, a simple 1995 P Washington quarter. A coin most of us have probably flipped into a wishing fountain or handed over for a cup of coffee, has shaken the entire coin-collecting world with a value soaring up to $1.3 million. Imagine holding a coin in your hand that's worth more than your house, your car, maybe even your entire retirement plan. That's the story we're diving into today. The unbelievable tale of how a tiny mistake in 1995 turned a regular quarter into one of the rarest treasures in American coin history. Now, before we unravel the secret behind this million-dollar mystery, think about this. How many times have you spent a quarter without even looking at it? Thousands of times. Maybe tens of thousands? Somewhere, someone did the exact same thing, except their quarter wasn't ordinary. It was the rare 1995 P-era coin that would later make headlines. The story begins in Philadelphia, 1995. The mint was producing hundreds of millions of quarters that year. Crisp, shiny coins featuring George Washington on the obverse and the proud eagle on the reverse. But somewhere in the middle of this massive production run, something went wrong. A single die used to strike these coins developed a microscopic flaw. This flaw wasn't visible to the naked eye at first, but with every strike, it created a slightly doubled image, most notably on the word liberty and the date 1995. It was what collectors later called a double die error, one of the rarest and most sought-after mistakes in the world of numismatics. Now, here's where it gets fascinating. For years, nobody noticed. These error quarters circulated across gas stations, diners, and vending machines. Some ended up in kids' piggy banks. Others clinked at the bottom of coffee shop tip jars. Nobody knew that some of these coins were worth more than a mansion. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world that a collector from Pennsylvania, a man who'd been hunting rare errors for decades, spotted something strange in his pocket change. Under bright light, he noticed the faintest doubling on the date. Thinking it was nothing more than a trick of the eye, he tossed it under his magnifier. And that's when his heart nearly stopped. The doubling was crisp, sharp, perfect. He realized instantly what he was looking at, a discovery that could rewrite modern coin history. He contacted a grading company, sent the coin for authentication, and when the results came back, the experts confirmed it. This was a true double-die 1995 P. Washington quarter, one of only a handful ever found. Word spread fast. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were calling, emailing, showing up in person with blank checks. Prices skyrocketed almost overnight. What was once a 25-cent coin was now commanding offers that climbed past $1 million. But here's the kicker. Not all 1995 P quarters with the doubling are identical. Some show clear doubling on the word liberty and in God we trust, while others show it on the date itself. The sharpest, most dramatic examples, the ones where you can see the doubling without magnification, are the coins that have fetched 6 to 7 figures at private auctions. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. And just when collectors thought they'd seen it all, another surprise emerged. A second example of the 1995 P double-die quarter appeared, not in a coin shop, but in an ordinary change jar belonging to a retired mechanic in Ohio. He'd been saving quarters for years, never suspecting that one of them could make him a millionaire. When that coin hit the auction block, it stunned everyone again, selling for nearly $1.3 million to a private collector who described it as a once-in-a-generation find. That sale sealed the coin's legend forever. Dealers now call the 1995 P. Washington quarter the million-dollar mistake, and for good reason. It's a reminder that history, luck, and human error can collide in the most unexpected ways, and sometimes that combination can change someone's life. First, flip your quarters and check the mint mark. The P indicates it was struck in Philadelphia. That's the mint responsible for this legendary batch. Then, under a bright light or with a magnifying glass, inspect the word Liberty and the date, 1995. Look closely for doubled lines or shadows around the letters and numbers. If you see them, clear, crisp, and aligned, you might just be holding a life-changing piece of history. And one last warning. Many collectors mistake ordinary wear or machine doubling for the real deal. True double-die coins have sharp, clean edges where the doubling appears, not a blurry or flat shadow. So if you're unsure, have your coin professionally graded before you cash in. Because here's the truth. Every major coin discovery starts with someone just like you. Someone curious enough to look closer. Someone willing to believe that a tiny piece of metal could be worth a fortune. Collectors were shocked when the first one sold. Dealers still whisper about where the next might appear. And for all we know, the next million-dollar quarter could be sitting quietly in your change jar right now. And what makes this story even more unbelievable is that the coin itself looks completely ordinary. It's the 1994 D. Washington quarter dollar, a coin that most people have probably spent 100 times without a second thought. But for a few lucky collectors, it became a life-changing discovery worth a fortune. That it all started with a man in Denver who was rolling up spare change from his dresser. He almost tossed one coin aside because it looked worn and slightly off in color. But something caught his eye. The D mint mark under Washington's neck looked strange, almost like it was doubled. That tiny imperfection ended up turning an ordinary 25-cent piece into a staggering payday. When that coin was sent to be graded, experts couldn't believe it. The die had struck it slightly off-center, leaving a faint doubling in the date and mint mark, a rare minting error that nearly never leaves the mint. Once word got out, collectors were stunned. Auction houses received dozens of calls overnight. Everyone wanted to know, how could a 1994 D quarter possibly be worth over $1 million? The answer lies in a combination of minting mystery and scarcity. In 1994, the Denver Mint was pushing production limits to meet circulation demand. Machines were running nonstop. A few planchets, the blank metal discs before they're struck, slipped through slightly misaligned or improperly alloyed. These tiny imperfections, invisible to the naked eye, gave birth to coins that were never meant to circulate. But here's where the story takes a shocking twist. One of these rare quarters, showing a faint double die on the obverse and an unusual luster caused by a metal composition error, was unknowingly spent at a vending machine in 1999. It ended up in a coin roll, traded hands countless times, and vanished into circulation for nearly a decade. When it finally resurfaced at an estate sale, the coin world went silent. Collectors couldn't believe what they were seeing. A seemingly common 1994 D quarter showing signs of a double strike, a brilliant uncirculated finish, and an unusual copper-nickel sheen. The exact combination that made it worth over $1 million. One expert said, "You could have had this coin in your pocket and never known it." That's how subtle this error is. But what happened next stunned everyone. After being authenticated by PCGS, the coin was auctioned, and the final hammer price climbed beyond anyone's expectations. When the bidding stopped, the 1994 D Washington quarter had sold for nearly $1.4 million. The man who once thought about spending it on a cup of coffee suddenly found himself holding one of the most valuable quarters in modern history. Collectors and dealers across the country rushed to inspect their own 1994 D quarters. Coin forums exploded with stories of people searching old jars, inherited collections, even parking meter change. Everyone wanted to find another one. That one hidden gem that could change everything. But here's the secret most people miss. The valuable 1994 D quarter doesn't just look shiny or new. What makes it rare is subtle. The doubling around the D mint mark in the last digit of the year, a faint misalignment around Washington's chin, and a slightly thicker rim on one side of the coin. In high grades, the metal even appears slightly darker due to the unique strike pressure. Most folks overlook it, but collectors know that's the telltale sign. And if your 1994 D quarter is uncirculated, meaning it still has that mint-fresh luster with no wear on Washington's hair or the eagle's feathers, you might just be holding something incredible. Experts say even lightly circulated versions with visible doubling can fetch thousands. But pristine examples? Those are the million-dollar miracles. Dealers today still talk about the man who turned his spare change into $1 million. They say he kept that quarter in a simple plastic holder for years, never realizing what it was. And that's what makes this story so powerful. It's not just about luck. It's about awareness to SO before you drop another quarter into a soda machine or slide it across a counter. Take a second look. Check that mint mark. Look closely at the date. Because one tiny detail could turn your pocket change into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. The 2002 D Mississippi quarter, one of the most mysterious and valuable coins to ever slip through the cracks of American change. At first glance, it looks like every other state quarter you've ever held. But buried in its design is a secret so powerful, collectors are still trying to figure out how it even happened. It started, like many great discoveries, with a simple mistake. A man in Mississippi was sorting through a handful of quarters for laundry money. Nothing special, until one coin caught the light in a strange way. Something about it looked off. He turned it over and noticed a subtle double impression, almost ghost-like, around the magnolia flower. That tiny difference, one barely visible to the naked eye, would go on to rewrite coin collecting history. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. When this coin was sent to a grading service, experts couldn't believe what they were seeing. It wasn't just a normal minting error. It was something far rarer, a die clash and doubling that appeared together on the same coin, caused by a mechanical malfunction so rare, it may have only happened once. The Denver Mint in 2002 was producing millions of quarters, but this one slipped through with a flaw no one caught. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were rushing to confirm if more existed. For weeks, coin forums exploded with debate. Was it real? Could a modern quarter really be worth a fortune? The answer came when the first of these rare 2002 D Mississippi quarters was authenticated and sold at a private auction for nearly $1.5 million. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle, and that's when the hunt began. Across America, people started checking every Mississippi quarter they could find. Grocery store clerks, truck drivers, retirees. Everyone wanted to be the next person to strike gold and silver. Because this wasn't just a coin anymore. It was a symbol of hope, proof that hidden treasures still exist in plain sight. But here's where the story gets even stranger. Another collector, this time in Texas, claimed he found a similar coin, but with an extra layer of detail. The edge reading looked irregular, as if the coin had been struck twice in slightly different positions. When this coin was inspected, experts confirmed something mind-blowing. The second strike came from a misaligned die, leaving the magnolia flower shifted ever so slightly upward. That microscopic movement was enough to make it one of the rarest quarters ever recorded. Dealers began whispering about it at conventions. Some even called it the Ghost Bloom quarter because of the faint double image that seems to haunt its design. Others said it was cursed, that every collector who sold one regretted it later when prices skyrocketed again. Whether you believe the legends or not, there's no denying this. The 2002 Mississippi quarter has become one of the most talked about state quarters in history. Still climbing. Today, pristine examples of this coin with verified errors are estimated at over $1.5 million. Even lower-grade versions can fetch thousands. The reason is simple. Demand is exploding, and supply is microscopic. Fewer than a dozen have been confirmed by major grading services, and most are locked away in private collections. But here's the part that most people miss. The key to identifying one of these million-dollar quarters is in the details. First, look closely at the magnolia flower on the reverse side. If you see any signs of doubling, especially along the petals or stem, that's your first clue. Then, check the edge of the coin. A slightly misaligned or uneven reading could mean you're holding one of the rare double-struck versions. Finally, look at the mint mark. It must have the letter D for Denver and the year 2002. Many people overlook these signs because they assume state quarters are too new to be valuable. But this coin proves them wrong. In the world of coin collecting, rarity doesn't always come from age. Sometimes it's born from accident, precision, and a little bit of luck. Collectors who've held this coin describe it as electric, the feeling that something so ordinary could hold such extraordinary worth. Imagine holding a simple 25-cent piece, knowing it could pay off your house, your car, and your future. That's the magic of discovery. And here's the real twist. Experts believe more of these coins are still out there, hiding in pockets, change jars, and old drawers across America. They're just waiting for someone with sharp eyes and a little patience to find them. So before you spend that next quarter on a coffee or drop it in a parking meter, take one more look. Check for the magnolia, check for the doubling, and check for that Denver mint mark. Because the next time you find a 2002 Mississippi quarter, it might